Welcome to Choppin' It Up at Camp Deer Park. Camp Deer Park is a ministry of the New York City Mennonite Church, a community of Christ where children, youth, and families from all cultures are welcome to fellowship together in the serenity of God's creation. Choppin' It Up is an opportunity for you to get to know some of the wonderful people who are collectively the Camp Deer Park family. This week, we will meet with Andres.
Andres, welcome to Choppin' It Up. It's good to have you here.
Happy to be here, and thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Hey, let's kick it right off. You're from Brooklyn. Tell us a little bit about your church. Tell us where you go to church and how you ended up there, and tell us something about your church that we might not know.
Well, I go to the United Revival Mennonite Church. Started going there towards the end of 2016. Had to do a little history check on this because it feels like ages now. So it's making 6 years at the end of this year. Time when you're having fun. A fun fact that may not know about my church. I would say there's a lot more people than you would expect. Whenever I go there, I never think there's a lot of people. Like, they don't look like a lot, but when you start counting the families, it's a little intimidating. Like, well, who are you guys? Like, you'll see families come back in and they'll be like, yeah, I've been here for 20 years. I was like, really? Who are you? And it's always interesting, meeting new faces all the time. You'll never run out of stories and just new faces and people to just have a good jolly time with. I mean, that's I think a special thing about United Revival. I mean, everyone's super friendly and welcoming, and there's always an opportunity every week to just introduce yourself, just stand up and be like, hey, I'm new, it's me. And we all give you a big round of applause. I think that's pretty special.
Is your church back in person? You meeting fully in person, or are you still doing Zoom services?
Yeah, so we are now fully meeting back in person. We for a time during the middle of the pandemic, towards the beginning, we did only Zoom was only like the pastor, maybe a couple musicians were allowed there. But we've been in person, with the wearing masks and all that. For about a year, maybe more, or about say, don't quote me on that. I'm so bad with time frames. But yeah, meeting in person.
Yeah, so churches tend to have so many families that go to these churches. So United Revival used to be on Knickerbocker, and used to be a storefront, and I think they had like the back room too. But they needed more room to grow. So I'm not surprised that you're saying that there's so many families that you've never seen before. But even with that, Andres, so there's so many, I think United Revival caters to so many different people. I would like to know for you, or maybe even for your family, but more so for you, because you've very much are a part of the ministry and things like that. What do you like most? What do you love most about United Revival?
I think I love just all like seeing others working together to make something happen. Like when I first stepped into that church, I had never seen such like unity, like structure in a church before, at least to that scale. I mean, there's the youth ministry, the children's ministry, women's ministry. There's I'm trying to figure out the translation for this in English. There are groups of people who help with like maintenance of the building, with cleaning of the building, and they all have their schedule, and it's all just like clockwork. Like everyone knows their role and kind of has a place in it. The sound people who work on who work on making sure that the recordings every Sunday, which we've more recently started to do for the last couple months now. So on YouTube, you can find us. Just seeing all of that work together, it's a little magical. You don't expect that a church would need that much effort and work into. Just show up, little mop here and there, a couple bread sandwiches, and you're good. But when you have this many people and people willing to do these things, it's definitely something that I think is sometimes underappreciated, and something that I love most about the church. Just how willing everyone's like, oh, you're new, come right here, I got something for you if you love doing it. And it's never in a force where they're like, oh, you're good at this, you enjoy this, you can join our group here. And I'm like, oh, that's actually awesome.
That is very awesome.
Yeah,
Very
I mean, there's definitely like a lot of activities that they do there that I didn't even know was like a thing. They do like their yearly international day where it's just like yeah, it's famous. It's famous. Everyone know Knickerbocker
I've been
now.
there.
It's
I've been there on the
it's just
street. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it's just I was like, oh, I was like, what is this? And they're like, yeah, we have internationals. They we get groups of people, you know, they make their country's favorite dish, and then we just go out there, have a jolly good time, eat food, you know, do a sermon and in this nice summer weather. And I'm like, that's interesting. I don't think a lot of places could pull something like that off, and it's just all just to give. We invite the neighborhood, and I think that's I said great.
They do cultural dances on the street and stuff. Yeah, it's beautiful. I've been there at least once for that. Yeah.
My favorite part is a Honduran table because the food is always good. So can you update us on what has changed for you since you last worked at camp? Like, what are you doing
Okay,
now?
so I know I'm the younging of the group, but it's been a long time since I've worked at camp, since I first started working at camp. I think when I was first there, I think I just graduated high school, and please correct me if I'm wrong. It was honestly, it's such a blur, like just being at camp. I don't even remember what I was doing outside of camp. I think I just graduated high school, maybe a year or two. I was working in my mom's firm, you know, working part-time, try to pay off for college, you know. And since then, joined United Revival, got my degree in mechanical engineering, bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Joined have a position now as a standards and certification engineer for now bear with me now, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME. You know, thank you, Kev, thank you, I see you. I'm currently engaged. COVID just throws everything so much more difficult, but hoping to get that ball rolling as soon as possible. Since then, my parents have bought a home for themselves, so I live in the upstairs area, you know, completely separate. I don't know, crazy, like in Brooklyn. That's wild. I know. I was like, oh, I thought we was gonna be Long Island people, but you know, dodged the bullet. No offense to Long Island people, love y'all. And yeah, I think it's been great. I mean, I can go into a lot of details of what happened in the last 10 years if you really want me to, but no.
Hey, Andres, tell us a little bit about like where you lived before. And you said your parents just bought a house in Brooklyn. Tell us a little bit about the neighborhood you lived in before and the neighborhood you live in now.
Yeah, so grew up for the majority of my life, I would like to say, yeah, no, I can clearly say, lived in on Wilson Ave, Bushwick, the area, right next, a block away from D. It was much more different than it was during that time than it is now. Lived in a first floor apartment, train style house, for a lot of memories there growing up. And my mom had always had a dream.
When you say a train style house, they call that a railroad house or a shotgun, where it's a long house with a narrow front and rooms going back, right?
Yes, yes, right? Correct,
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Not everyone knows what a railroad or a train style house is here.
Got you. It would have been easier if the door was just like in the front, but you actually had to go to the hallway, go to the back, and then that's when the door started, and you had to walk all the way around to your room. But you know, you live with what you live with. Yeah, so grew up there most of my life. Bushwick's still a developing community, and new stores and new buildings being made there all the time now. If you take a walk around there, and so it had always been a dream for my mom to own a house, and she finally did it. She with a family effort, we put in the money together to put the down payment, get a home for herself. That's something that she can call her own. And they put a lot of work into this building, let me tell you.
What neighborhood is that in?
Currently Cypress Hills.
Okay.
So right next to Highland Park, which is right next to Forest Park. It's, I think, the only other big park in Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken. Did a quick Google Maps look. did quite a lot of cemeteries around here as well, but mostly parks as well. But yeah, right in that neighborhood.
When I think of that neighborhood, I do think of cemeteries. Unfortunately, Cypress has a lot of cemeteries. Yeah.
Okay. So you might, Andres, ask me some questions when I ask you this question. But so the first, because of what you said about your introduction to Camp Deer Park, I was trying to remember your introduction, but it seems like you probably have some questions for us of what do we remember about your first time here. What do you remember? Like you were a camper before, correct?
So interestingly enough, I am one of the few people who was never a sleepaway camper. Yeah. And
Oh,
my introduction to camp was always going there for my church. But then for a time, I did do the teen week. So that week, that's what I did.
yeah, I remember that.
I
Yeah.
remember
And then
that.
did,
Yeah.
yeah, did the lead week and yeah, did the lead week as well a couple times. And so that was like my sleepaway time at camp, like, so I kind of like missed out on the summer times, but it honestly doesn't feel as like that, having worked there.
Yeah, okay, now that makes more sense because I remember you started a year before I started, and you, I think you did lead under Zachary, and he's the one that recommended you the following year, and then I reached out to you, and yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, yeah. That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah. I just remember joining one year. I think it was like, hey, you want to work for camp? And I was like, ah, sure. I don't got much going on in my summers. Just a young grasshopper, no bills to pay at that time. And I think Zachary was like, oh, why do you want to join, interview process? And that's how it started. Do you happen to remember, Ken, what the theme of that year was? Because I was like trying to look at old pictures, which I don't have because I was never a picture kind of person. But like, do you remember what probably 13 or 14 was? Do you have like
Boy,
a
I
list of that?
don't. We need Zachary Garber here to remind us of the. I probably could dig in my drawer of T-shirts and pull it out,
Yeah.
right?
I think 2013 was a love with the,
Oh, that was the green circle shirt. Love
and
is.
then 2014 has to be like the red llama, I believe.
That's right. That's right. It was
Okay,
doing
see.
nothing. Do nothing. Nothing.
Out
Do
of
nothing
self-ambition,
out of
yeah.
self-ambition. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
vain
Wow.
conceit.
Actually,
Yeah.
from downtown. Way to go.
Right.
I distinctly remember the llama shirt, but I can't remember what was before that. Like I remember just being like red llama shirt, my shirt. And then before that, I was like, what happened? What was before and after that? Yeah. So that
And
clears up a lot of things. Uh-huh.
as a staff, do you remember any camper that taught you anything?
Working with campers will teach you a lot of things that you don't know about yourself. Everyone here can attest to that. You don't realize what it's like to take care of a whole camp full of children until you're in a cabin with them, telling them to all go to sleep and telling them they can't have noodles at 11 p.m. and no, you cannot just go leave them, so that they so many lessons to remember. But one thing that really in general that stuck out to me was being able to trust them as adults and not always treat them as children, to give them that opportunity to grow. I think that was something in general that they all, even if they didn't know it, wanted from me and from other staff. That was definitely something that stuck with me a long time, that just because they seem like immature children and for the most part they were acting as children, they wanted to be looked at as an adult, to be given that leeway and to know that you have their back, no matter what they do. And that's sort of something that stuck with me always.
That's one thing that I've always appreciated about you, Andres. Like you, Marlena, Eric, I feel like you guys have always met the campers at their level in a respectful way. And you never, went down to the level, but as an adult, you respected them. And that's one reason why I kept on asking you to come back. And one reason why you've been just a great counselor in general.
No, thank you. I mean, another thing I also did learn from a camper is how to use an EpiPen. Didn't know I needed to know that skill, but that was a very useful skill to learn. God knows exactly what I'm referring to. I never had to use it,
That's
thankfully. We always
hilarious.
kept the camper safe, but knowing how to do it was a good thing to have in the back pocket.
Andres, Can you think of a time like specifically when you know that you made a difference in a camper's life?
Yes, I'll call him Bobby. There was a time where Bobby, my camper, was looking down at themselves and feeling really, really hurt, even though they didn't seem like it. That that they were sort of gaining this reputation of being a bad camper, of being a bad person, and they, from what they described, always it came off as if they couldn't control themselves in a way. Like they had wanted to do the good thing, to be like the responsible, good camper, the gold star. But every time the opportunity came up, it always seemed like they failed. And every time, they slept up even a little bit, everyone kind of referred to them, or they felt that all the staff was looking at them as a bad camper. And I remember just, one night they were just kind of sitting on their own, which is very out of the ordinary for them. And I was like, oh, when you do a head count, you're like, I'm missing one. Let's go look for them. And I go to this was in Locust Haven, so all the rooms were like separate. So I went to one of the back rooms, or their room actually, and I was like, hey, what's up? Are you in here all by yourself? I remember sitting down and having a long, just listening to them and having a long conversation. And that's when they explained to me like how they were feeling. And I was like, to me, in my mind, I was like, this is really out of left field. I thought you were having a jolly good old time. I thought we were all good. I thought you just needed a break from everyone else. And I just remember, sitting down, talking to them and telling them, I was like, hey, look, it's not easy, to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It's not easy to change the perception of what you see of yourself and what others see of you. That takes time. Like, don't expect that you do one good thing once and the whole thing is flipped. If that was the case, everything would be so much easier in life, and that isn't. As like, if you want to be the person that you see yourself as, then that's going to take time. That's going to take, a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, as long as it takes. And if you keep doing it, if you're consistent, that will happen. You have to believe in yourself. I mean, I'm here for you as much as I can be, but when you go home, when summer camp is over and you want to actually pursue this, you gotta keep at it, no matter what other people say of you. And that was like a long, heartfelt moment that we had, that we shared. And I remember from that day, even though he wasn't perfect, of course, he definitely was. They were definitely putting more effort into being the person that they were striving to be. And this was a lot coming from like an 11, 12-year-old, I believe at the time, one of the older kids. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I didn't know you don't know you were struggling with this. But yeah, I remember that moment pretty well.
That's cool. That's a great
Do you know
story.
if Bobby came back?
Well, Bobby definitely came back. Bobby definitely made multiple returns.
Bobby came back.
Bobby came back. And it was definitely good seeing them again. But no, yeah, it was just good seeing them and seeing how they'd grown, and they were no longer squeaky voiced little kids and adults and stuff, or not adults but teens.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you came with, I guess, 2 churches, your old church and your current church, and you've been very a part of summer camp. Sometimes when my family comes here, I'll try to lead you with this question a little bit. When my family comes here, there's a different Kevin than from my family's here from summer camp. So I would like to know, is there a different Andres when you are here with your church? And is there a different Andres when you're here with summer camp?
I would like to believe no, but I think that's easier from someone who's observing me rather than me reflecting upon myself. I would like to say, I mean, camp in a sense gives that opportunity to sort of be the role model for these campers. So when you have that, that staff hat, you got that staff hat on, you have to be aware of, like, even a bit more conscious of what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and how you're leading others. You are stepping into the role of a leader, quite literally living with these, staying a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or up to 5 weeks at a time. And you get to know them more interpersonally. So that responsibility of basically having like a child with you, like your child from another mother, quite literally, definitely in a way changes you. Like you may not, thinking back on it, I realized that like I put myself on a, put my chest up higher, my head held higher, put myself in a, like, I'm confident, this is me, this is Andres. Even though I was exhausted and tired by like week 4, that definitely, when you have little eyes looking at you, that definitely puts you on that. But I would like to say that like I try to keep the same, the same demeanor, the same, laid back, relaxed, easy to speak to person that I believe that I am, that others have told me that I am. Even with these campers, I mean, in church, I think it's sort of the same way, even though, I mean, in my position specifically, I'm the bassist at the church. So I'm up there on stage, for a good hour and a half. And even if, people may not be directly looking at me, I still have that responsibility to, just, sit up a little bit straighter, look a little bit more direct into the crowd, because I mean, everyone's looking my general direction. I can't, I can't seem like I'm bored out my mind up there, or, not to say that I am, but I can't be like, I can't, it doesn't come off that way. I try to keep the two as close as possible, but I think circumstances always change us even a little bit.
Okay,
Great.
so during your whole duration.
Go ahead, Ashley. I'm sorry.
During your whole duration at Camp Deer Park, I know you came a couple of times. Is there anything that you have learned that you still use today, whether at church or at work or?
I would say rule number 1 is don't take sunscreen for granted. This is very helpful for you 10 years from now. Don't at all. There's a reason it exists, and there's a reason people use it. And I mean, another one, I got like a couple on here, but another one is, how to start a fire. Quite useful, actually. Very, very useful. In a lot of circumstances, actually, when your mom asks you how to build a fire in the backyard because she wants to roast marshmallows more naturally in the camp experience, I said, sure. Can't have camp 1 year, so we got to bring camp to us. But something I think I mentioned in the beginning was just, giving the opportunity for others, allowing others to learn from themselves, but always being there on the sidelines to have their back when they need it most. It's one thing to tell a person to do something. It's another thing to guide them and then let them experience it and sort of, correct and be like, I got you, I'm there for you. And that's a very difficult thing, at least for me specifically to do that, because me as a person, I want to be like, I know exactly what to do. I could do this for you. But people generally don't take away as much if you do it that way. And that's something, as a camper, as a camp staff teaching these, teaching the campers, that's something that's like week 1, you have to figure out how to do. Like, you can't watch, how many do we have? 12, 15 campers at once. You only have 2 eyeballs,
Mm-hmm.
You got to give some leeway. So I feel like that's something that's always come away with it. Even if in the day-to-day, I kind of have to like remember, like, let this person do this. They got this. You got this. You're there for them if they need it, but they got it.
So if there's any parents out there thinking about sending your kids to camp, it's 8 to 10 campers in a cabin, not 15, by the way.
they felt like 15.
8 to 10. It maybe felt like 15, but it is really 8 to 10 campers in a cabin.
Yeah, please, Kevin, please correct my memory. This is a long time ago.
Right. You're fine.
Your child's counselor will not be watching 15 videos. Hey, Andres, you were like you said, you were part of LEAD, you were a participant, then you were staff, and now you're a donor. You're a donor to camp. Last year we had a challenge to sign up 33 new monthly donors, and you took on that challenge, and you are now a monthly donor. So thank you for that, first of all. But what was your thought process? Why did you say, you know what, I want to be a monthly donor to Camp Deer Park?
I mean, reason number 1 was it was very easy to do. Like, it was just pretty straightforward. I mean, we have the age of technology. I didn't feel like there was any friction to doing it beyond my initial experience of making sure I did it correctly, which was my own self-doubt. But also, it just feels good to contribute back to something that you've sort of taken from or have been able to grow from, using that opportunity to, you know, using the opportunity to give, be part of the Promise Circle, and knowing that there is another generation of children going to camp, you know, learning the same things that I learned, and having camp staff that sort of, even my time when I was in Teen Week, who were teaching me certain things when I was there for that time. It feels nice, and it feels good to know that that's happening, that I'm able to be a part of that. You know, continue that cycle of you know, reaping, sowing, and planting new seeds for future generations. I mean, you can't, as you said, I think towards the beginning, you know, I'm the next generation, and it's sort of on me to support the next upcoming children that are, you know, going to be our leaders, our firefighters, our policemen, our politicians, our doctors, our workers, or wherever, you know, our camp directors, you know, our kitchen staff, you know, the next group of people that will do that. And it feels great to take away that, you know, just to know that that's happening.
Well, we greatly appreciate you doing that. And I guess I would like to know, before doing that, was that idea of being a donor daunting for you, or were you thinking about that before you became a donor?
In what daunting? In what sense?
Like, I have to give, I have to sign up for this, and you know, give a certain amount. I have to give $1 million to support camp. You know, you are now actually a member of the Promise Circle. How does that make you feel to be doing it?
I mean, the process was painless. As I said, it was quite easy to do. I think the hardest part for me was knowing, like, what was the amount that was like worthy to give back to camp. You know, like, camp is such a special place in my mind and in my heart, and it's, you know, it never feels like what you give is enough. Even though I'm sure the whole, you know, all of camp appreciates and it is always welcoming and wanting this, but it always feels like I want to do a little bit more, give a little bit more. And at some point you gotta, I think that's like the most daunting thing, just not being afraid to give, not saying like, oh, I'm doing this wrong, I'm not giving enough. Just giving, the act of giving is enough to help anyone in need, no matter how small or how big.
I appreciate that a lot, Andres.
Yeah.
What is your vision for Camp Deer Park in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Okay, so I had to actually cut this part down a little bit because I took this way too literally.
Love it.
Way too literally. So I mean, in the next 5 years, I want to say, well, COVID has definitely probably thrown a wrench in a lot of things, but of course, this is as is done to the rest of the world. But you know, recovering from that in 5 years, I definitely see, you know, camp in its current state finishing the last of its, I would say, renovation Promise Woods plans, putting the finishing touches, that little flag of Camp Deer Park in the back there. You know, adding the niceties and sort of starting this rotation of the Promise Wood being the new place where memories are being made for these campers. I mean, a couple years back, you know, Locust Haven was taken down, and so, you know, I think my generation, or maybe a year or two after that, a couple years after that, is the last generation that got to experience that. But now we have this new these new wonderful buildings, which allows a much more closeness since they've it's a much more larger, much more spacious room. And in the next 5 years, I just seeing that start to happen, seeing that the fruits of that labor start to blossom much more clearly, much more directly. And in the next 10 years, I sort of see camp continuing that expansion a little bit, maybe creating a second set of camp, or a second set of Promise Woods. I would say Promise Woods, you know, 2, and starting that sort of like rotation, because ideally so many kids would go there that we would once again run out of space. In 10 years, I also see, you know, Kevin Smith as the new council board leader and ruler of all of camp. Now, no pressure, Kev. I'm totally messing with you. Right. And Ashley by his side, no pressure. I can't help but throw in a joke every so often.
Uh-huh.
But maybe more seriously. But I also see 10 years camp being a much more known place, a much more available place to everyone, you know, like not just Mennonites or churches only knowing what camp was, but more like, oh, you know, just everyone who wants to experience what camp has to offer, you know, being much, much more known, I would say, having a much stronger presence and impact. And in 15 years, 15 years is hard because it feels so long. At the same time, it doesn't. I guess starting with myself, I see myself, you know, still going back there, still going back to camp, still helping out with the auctions, with you know, being a continuing monthly donor, seeing how camp has changed, and maybe even having a more direct part in how camp plays out with the next couple of steps. In terms of camp as a facility as well, definitely increasing that sap syrup industry because it tastes
Nice.
so good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I ain't forget about it. It's back there, but you guys have a good stock going on, and I've seen the process, and I don't understand it, but it tastes really good. Knowing it's like you can't get more fresh than that. It's like, how fresh is that? You want to walk 50 feet behind? I'll show you. Like, you know, and seeing, you know, seeing that part of it as well. Maybe new ideas forming, things that I can't even begin to think of at this time. But yeah.
Grace, when you said that, when you talked about, you know, that the promised woods will be the places that people will talk about, and that's where their memories will be, man, I got a little emotional because, you know, we talk about a lot of our focus has been in building the cabins, but I remember when we dedicated one of the first cabins, Edgar Stace says, now the hard work begins. Now the hard work of ministry in these cabins begins, and I just think about all the people who have already have memories of that space. And anyway, man, I really appreciated that. Hey, we're about wrapping it up here. Your favorite shirt, your all-time favorite Camp Deer Park staff shirt, what is it?
Well, I did give a little spoiler ahead. I mean, it's the red llama shirt. Something about it's just iconic. Red llama, nothing else.
The red llama shirt. Yeah, and I got to ask, do you still have it?
I had it. I know I had it, but sometime during COVID, between the moving and cleaning up, and I don't know where it is. I imagine it's in a better place because my mom doesn't throw anything out. She's a very meticulous person. You've met her. She's like, she has this in a box somewhere, and I was like, I couldn't find it, but Brenda has all of her shirts, and unfortunately she doesn't have the red llama shirt, but she has all of her shirts still that she still wears. I also kind of grew out them a little bit, so they couldn't. And I felt kind of that, like they were just over time they're starting to wear, and I was like, no, I kind of want to preserve them, you know, like I can't keep throwing them in the washer and dryer. Funny minor side story, not to derail us a little bit. There was a Green Lantern shirt that I found a picture of in 2014-13 that I first got. I still have that shirt, and that shirt does not look like that at all. So I can't imagine doing that to one of the camp shirts. I was like, no, I can't. It has to stay like this. Good. Yeah, that was
at some point
shirt.
You take it out of the rotation and you preserve it, right?
Yeah. I wish I had the space, just like a hall where I can just like pin them up like football or baseball shirts, and just kind of mount them for display.
So we want to try something new, and it's just called the rapid question section of this, and it's for fun. So I'm going to ask you 5 random questions, either or, and I would like you to choose the one of your preference. So, for example, do you have any questions about that? You're good.
No, I'm good. Do I have a timer?
As quick as you can. Right, 2 seconds. Okay, so for the first one, would you rather drive a Lexus or BMW?
Lexus.
Okay, Chinese food, Italian?
Italian.
Sleeping outside at camp, do you want to be in the front lawn of the main house or Shalom?
Shalom.
Nice, okay. Okay, campfire. The last night, do you want to have it at the top of the hill or do you want to have it at the chapel basement?
On top of the hill.
Okay, nice. And the last one is breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast. All day.
Breakfast. Wow. All right. Andres, thank you so much for joining us, man. This has been so fun. Our time is up, and we're actually a little over time. But, man, thank you so much for joining us, for just sharing your heart. And it's been so encouraging for me. I just really appreciate it. Appreciate you so much. And I'm thinking about Zach Garber tonight. I'm like, man, I hope Zach Garber's watching, because, you know, you worked for him when you were young. And appreciate that a lot. So thank you so much for being with us. We're going to close out, folks. Next week Tuesday is our last Chopping It Up. We have Pastor Omar and Tanya Guzman joining us, so join us next week at 7 p.m. On Tuesday night. And anyway, so we'll close out with a prayer. God, thank you so much for your grace. Thank you for United Revival, for the ministry of the entire Carrion family. Thank you for Andres, and bless him and his work, and as he served you at his job. Thank you for Camp Deer Park. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Andres. We appreciate you being here. Good night, everyone. Be safe.